All right. Well, thanks, David. Thanks for joining us. I didn't hear what Manpreet said. I don't know if he didn't introduce if he introduced you, but it's good to see you again. Thanks for
Good to see
joining
you,
us
Tom.
here.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
No problem. All right, cool. So it's at 3 o'clock. We will get started. So today we have David Patrick getting data from Dataverse inside Microsoft Teams, and I'll let you introduce yourself and thanks for coming again. I'll be here in the background looking at the questions if anything comes through. We have chats enabled, so people feel free to reach out directly in the chat. And take it away, David.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom. Yeah, I've got one eyeball in the chat, one eyeball on my presentation, so we'll see how we can do it. Yeah, welcome everyone. Thanks for sticking around to the end. I heard they saved the best for last, so thank you for that honor. I appreciate that. This is my talk, Getting Data from Dataverse inside of Microsoft Teams. As Tom mentioned, my name is Dave Patrick. I'm a SME at the U.S. Army. That's a subject matter expert over at Aberdeen Proving Ground down here in Maryland, so not too far from Philly. I'd like to get up there every now and again. Uh, I've got a bunch of certifications: Microsoft Certified Trainer, Certified Solution Expert, Solution Developer, MVP. My favorite one is MCP Dead. That one's an older one, but it stands for Microsoft Certified Professional Developer Enterprise Application Developer. But I think someone did it on purpose because the acronym's kind of funny, and jokes on them. I wear it loud and proud. So, ha. I work for a company called DSA Inc. If anyone's interested, we're always looking for good people to hire. Check out our site for more information. I also have got a couple of side gigs. I teach at the University of Maryland. I'm an adjunct professor there, as well as Towson University, and I don't have it listed, but Stevenson University, if anyone's heard of that one. That was a smaller private one down here in Maryland. So try to keep myself fresh by interacting with the students. We're actually wrapping up the semester now. It's finals. So if any of the students have joined, good luck on the finals. I run a couple of user groups, on meetup.com, Baltimore Cloud, and Mad SharePoint, where we commiserate about SharePoint. So I want to thanks to our sponsor, Synology. Hopefully I got that right. Without them, this wouldn't be possible. So we really appreciate their support. We love the folks that are attending. Love to hear your feedback. So there's a couple of links there. I'm sure other people have put them up. I put them up again. To give feedback on both my session, the one on the right, on the one on the left, to give feedback on the entire event. There is a raffle, so if you haven't seen, there's a network attack storage, a $300 value. Please don't enter it because I want to win it, so I put my name in there. But if you want to throw your name in the hat, then there's that link to enter the raffle. And then if you registered, make sure you registered for today's event. You can just grab a link and join. If you registered, there's going to be, during the close, I believe, they're going to raffle off some prizes, some Amazon gift cards, some books and whatnot. So that's exciting. Make sure you registered for today's event in order to be in that. So again, shout out to my company. Been doing this for a long time. Great company to work for. Literally, I started there 10 years ago. I thought I'd be there 6 months. I'm still there, and I'm still the rookie. There's people that have been there 20, 30, 40 years. 45 years is, I think, the one who's got the record. So it actually really is a great company to work for. If you want more information, please check out, email me, check out our website. I got a little URL, tinyurl.com/DSA job that lists just, focuses on what openings we have. And again, if you want to join my user group, we're meeting virtually now. So we do some hybrid meetings as well. That's kind of a nice side effect of the pandemic, if there is one, that we were forced to kind of learn how to do hybrid meetings and virtual meetings. So check us out on meetup.com/Baltimore-cloud. I also have prizes. So if anyone's interested, I've got some, what are these things? I'll look at my background, kind of hit it, but it's the Pluralsight free 1 month passes, a $29 value. So I got 3 of those to give away at the end. I mentioned that I teach at college, so I like to have pop quizzes. There will be a pop quiz at the end of this, see who's been paying attention. And if you have the right answer, or maybe any answer, I'll give away some of those at the end. All right, so we got 50 minutes. Let's get into this. What's the agenda? I'm talking about Dataverse and Teams, and so I want to go over really 3 main things. These are the 3 main takeaways for today's talk. One, how do you get started? How do you provision your Dataverse environment, your Dataverse database for Teams? We'll show you how to do that. It's really easy. 2, how do you create your first table that's going to hold your data? How do you back up that data? How do you restore that data? I'm a big believer. I've been doing database applications for over 30 years now. So creating an application that allows you to create, read, update, and delete data. Those are the CRUD operations of the database world. So if you can create a table, there you can enter data, get that data back out, make updates, remove it. then you've created a CRUD-based database application. That's what we want you to be able to do. Finally, be able to take that application and deploy it so other people can use it. So out to your team, out to your company, so that other, it's not just you and your own data, other people can share in the gloriousness that is your database and your app. So with that, let's do a quick intro to Teams. And this one used to be much more relevant I've been doing this talk for a while now. And when people were, before the pandemic, people were first starting to learn how to use Teams. But I think it is still relevant because of two things. One is I'm going to introduce you to a tool that makes it really easy for people to delve into some of the features of Teams that maybe they haven't had time to explore in their environment. And two, this tool is not in your production environment, so it's a way to play around without hurting anything. At the Army, we love our acronyms, and they love to say, Dave, give me the bottom line up front, or give me the bluff. So if I'm on the elevator with a colonel or one of the higher ups, they don't have, I got like a minute or 30 seconds to tell them about something. This is what I'm doing. I'm giving you guys the bluff for Teams. So what is Teams? It's chat-based workspace. It replaced, we used to use Same Time from IBM. Instant message, and for any one of those older folks, AOL, IM, Teams is that, but it's much more than that. And that's one of the things I think some people don't realize, that they might think Teams does one thing. It's more than chat, right? It's a hub for teamwork. So it's collaboration. And when people say that, sometimes I get these blank stares. Well, what does that mean? What's collaboration? We're going to collaborate. What is that? It means working together on something, whether it's on a website or a list that exists on a website, entering data, editing data. Maybe it's a document that sits on a website or in Teams. And I say sits on a website. I should mention, Teams is a great front end to SharePoint Online. There's a lot of confusion. Sometimes people say, should I use Teams or should I use SharePoint Online? But when you upload a document to Teams, it's being stored either in SharePoint Online or on OneDrive. So really, it's done a great service for getting more people into, kind of into work using SharePoint, even if they don't know they're using SharePoint. So that's what they mean when they say it's a hub for teamwork. It allows you to upload a document and get multiple people working on that document, share that document with others, upload data in lists, share that data, and it really has helped a lot of people that used to say, I hate SharePoint, I'll never use SharePoint, start using SharePoint. It's customizable, so you can make changes, you can add banners, you can, there's a lot, add different apps to each team, and then of course it's built on the built-in security in Office 365. So all that enterprise level security that you already had with Azure Active Directory is available to be used in Teams. Now, I mentioned a tool that you could use to help people learn Teams, and this is the tool that I use to teach people how to collaborate with Teams. It's at teamsdemo.office.com, and I'll show it to you. What this website is from Microsoft, and it gives you a click-through tour of some cool Teams features, some features that probably the greatest sin from Microsoft is that they make Teams look very super easy to use, and because of that, a lot of managers think you don't need any training. Hey, here's Teams, go learn it. And people will not do training. They don't want to spend the time, a whole lunch hour or whatever. Sending them this link, having them walk through it, I think does a long way to showing them some of the features that they might not otherwise be aware of. So let's walk through the desktop version of this. It's a 5-minute step through. As you can see here, we're walking through, and it tells you a little bit of information about, some of the navigation elements on the left-hand side. So in this instance, it's talking about what the activity icon is. In the navigation bar, you can click next and it goes into information about what a Teams is. It's a collection of people and content. You can actually create your own teams. This is another one that in a production environment, you may be afraid to create a team. You don't want to mess things up. Then, there might be a naming convention you're supposed to follow. So you're kind of, well, walking through here, you can see what the process looks like without having to worry about messing up production. So I'll click next here. So it's walking me through, here's create a team. You can build one from scratch, or you can copy an existing from an already in a group. After 65 group might have 10 or 12 people in it already. Maybe you want to make a team for that group. So I think this one selects that option. It allows you to choose the group or team that you're copying. So in this case, we're choosing the Northwind Traders. This is all Microsoft, sample data. If you've worked with any Microsoft sample data, you recognize some of these names. So you're going in, you're changing that, giving it a new name. And again, I'm not really doing this in Teams. So the nice thing about this particular demo is it's easy to use or to display and walk through using a Teams meeting like we're doing right now. So sometimes it's tough when you're trying to demo Teams while using Teams. This walkthrough, this tool helps you do that very easily. So what are we doing here? We're going to go ahead and add some members to our team. We'll add Grady, we'll add Megan, Megan's an owner, so we upgraded Megan to an owner. So really easy. And I think this, when I've shown this to some of my project managers and some of my sort of upper managers, the people that are not necessarily really techie, they get sort of a sigh of relief. Oh, wow, that wasn't that hard. That's something I could do. And I go, yes, it's, that way I can kind of offload some of that work. They're not reaching out to me every time they need to create a new team. This walks them through the difference between a public and a private team. It walks them through managing a team, walks them through some of the, how to see the owners and the members, where I can set up different channels, how to have conversations. This is one of my favorite things that this tool highlights, is how to have those threaded conversations versus just kind of people replying but starting a whole nother conversation. Again, this walks through what some of the icons means. This is a private channel versus a private team that we saw 2 seconds ago. This walks through the different topics in the channel and how you can reply, how you're supposed to reply to something versus start your own conversation if you meant it to be a reply. It walks them through things like, as you're communicating with your friends, you can mention them so they get a notification, maybe an email or a little pop-up depending on their online status. And in this particular one, here's a really cool feature. When we first started using this, we've been using this tool for a number of years now. It didn't have the translate feature because Teams didn't have the translate feature. But now the demo's been updated and it actually shows you the translate feature, where if someone, in this case Diego, responds in Spanish, Teams is actually smart enough to say, oh, you know what? Would you like me to translate that for you? Yes, I would. I'll click translate, and now all of a sudden it does a pretty good translation from Spanish to English. So I can, even though I don't speak Spanish, I can read what Diego was replying to me and saying. So a lot of cool features. It talks a little bit about the documents, where the files live. You can see here where it has the indication that they're actually secretly in SharePoint. I say secretly, they're not really secretly, but it seems like it. It goes into the different chats and talks about how a chat is different than a chat in a Teams channel. And in fact, when you're in a chat, when you upload a document, that's where it's going to OneDrive versus SharePoint. It talks about how you can have conversations with multiple people. It can be one-on-one, or you can add additional people to those chats. This is one of those gotchas that I like that has happened to me before, where I'm having a chat with somebody. We've added a couple other people to the chat, and I see someone said, when you see the SharePoint inside of Microsoft 6, well, yeah, right, Joe. And here, they're doing, they're showing the text formatting and that you can bold things. But when you have these chats, you can actually rename them. So in this case, because this chat was around a particular topic, the project wildlife discussion, instead of just seeing like 4 or 5 random names, which you wouldn't see them all anyway, right? It looks like this one over here. This is a hot tip, right? There's 6 people in this chat. This is very important. I've responded to chats before where I thought there was only 2 people in it, and I said, yeah, I hate that Mary, she sucks. And then Mary said, hey, I'm in the chat, and I go, oh no. So make sure if you're doing chat, you check to see, you can actually click on that and it'll list the people in the chat, especially if it's been renamed. So that's something to kind of watch out for. But again, this demo I think does a great job. It shows how the new pop out feature, where you can pop out a chat. That's a feature that wasn't around when Teams first came out. So the demo has been really good, keeping up to date with a lot of the new features, and again, does a great job. I can email this link to someone. I can email it to one of my project managers and say, hey, walk through this. Let me know if you have any questions. There's additional topics if they want to dive deeper into some of the other topics. I find that it's just a great tool to introduce Teams to folks so they have an awareness of some of the capabilities. All right, now let's switch over and talk about the common data service. Wait, that's not right. We renamed it. It's Microsoft DataFlex Pro. Wait, that's not right either. So Microsoft, a little history, at first the Dataverse was originally called the Common Data Service. Then I guess they figured that was too much of a mouthful. For a hot second, they renamed it to Microsoft DataFlex Pro. Then they found out there was some copyright issues. So then they settled on Dataverse. So now everything's Dataverse, Microsoft Dataverse. So what is Microsoft Dataverse? It's part of the Microsoft Power Platform. So what does that mean? It means that Power BI can, in just a few clicks, connect to Dataverse and do visualizations on that Dataverse data. And we'll show you that in a second. Power Apps, very easy to connect to Dataverse and do create, read, update, delete with that data. Power Automate, very easy to connect to Dataverse and, on a new record, trigger an event based on the existence of that new record, and so on and so forth. So it is part and parcel, part of the family, very easy to work with. It's not like some third party that was tacked on or anything like that. And there's a great little article on Microsoft Learn that dives into some of the details. What I love about the article that I captured a screenshot of is that it did, kind of mentioned that the new naming, kind of warned you that the, table and field, or field is now called column, entity is now called table, common data service is now Dataverse. I think that's important because as you dive into Dataverse, especially if you're a developer, you're going to encounter some of those old terms. They're not removed everywhere. And I've got a link that talks about where they're still using the old terms versus the new terms. Here's an example of Dataverse. So this is Power Apps. So I went to the Power Apps website and I clicked in the left-hand side, the little Dataverse, and I clicked on tables. And now you can see these are some of the standard tables that come with Dataverse. So account, address, appointment. You can see some of the metadata. So like the internal name, the type of table, whether it's managed or not, whether it's customizable, any tags that have been applied to it. So it's inside the browser, and in this case, accessing it from Power Apps. Very easy to create new tables if I have the permission. I can do imports, I can do exports. So, browser-based, doesn't matter what operating system I'm running. It is, that sort of part of, goes to the definition of Dataverse. It's a database in the cloud. Why Dataverse? So, as I just showed, it's really easy to manage. The metadata is accessible from the browser. The actual data is accessible and stored in the cloud. I don't have to really worry about, what operating system's in the background, what version or patching or anything like that. Because it uses Office 365, it's easy to secure. I can use roles to, this one's read only, this one's read write. If you're using Dynamics 365, it already uses Dataverse, so you're already using Dataverse and you can extend it using Power Apps. Not only does it have the metadata in the cloud, but there's rich type of metadata. So not just whether something's required or not, but you have different data types, you have relationships and things like that. There's logic and validation you can do. So you can do things like calculated columns, business rules, and workflows. And then my favorite is the productivity tool. Everyone's favorite productivity tool. Dataverse has a great support for Microsoft Excel. You can actually, there's actually an add-in I'm going to show you guys that you can use. So in Excel, I can do create, read, update, and delete to Dataverse, which is unusual. Up until recently, I feel like Excel was mainly just to read data and then do charts and pivot tables and things like that. It was rare that you could write back to the data source, but with Dataverse and this Office add-in, you can actually do all the CRUD operations, and I'll show you that. So here we are again in the Power Apps portal, and this is an older screenshot, and I left this up just to kind of highlight some of the older names. So this is back when the user interface still had the entities and option sets. That's all been changed now. But you'll notice up the ribbon that there's support for getting data. So this is that example where I mentioned that if you wanted to access maybe the account data and visualize your accounts in Power BI, this is how easy you can do it. You can literally click on the get data, and then it'll bring up a drop down, one of which says analyze in Power BI. And when you click that drop down, what's going to happen is it's going to open up a connection file that contains the URL to the Dataverse environment, and that's what this guy is right here. And then you can select the different accounts that you want to maybe include in your visualization. So in this case, I kept it really simple. I just chose the one account. I got a little preview of the data, so I know, oh, that's the data I expected to see. Later, I'm going to talk a little bit about different environments, and it is tricky. Sometimes if you're in the wrong environment, you might not see the data you expect, so that's why this is helpful and important. I'm going to go ahead and load the data. This is not it could be a whole nother talk, but there's an option here if you wanted to do transform data. What that does is that brings up a whole Power Query window where I could do extract, transform, and load. I could do things like split columns and calculate columns and all sorts of stuff, but we're going to keep it simple and just do a load. And then I selected a couple of columns over here, website URL, revenue. And what that does is Power BI is very helpful with trying to recommend visualizations and recognized, hey, this was some currency, so maybe a pie chart, or in this case, a bar chart, would be a good visualization for this particular data, and it turns out it is. I can quickly see that CP&L is my biggest revenue customer, followed by Fourth Coffee, and all the way at the bottom is it looks like Coho Winery. So if I want, I'll have to go out to the winery and buy some wine and try to do something to bump up sales with them. But that's how quickly I went to go from Dataverse to Power BI, and that's when we say that they're part of the same family, they're integrated and all that. That's what we mean. It's really just a few clicks to go from bam, I'm in Dataverse, I'm opening the connection file, and now I'm visualizing data from Dataverse. I could have gone the opposite way. I could have gone in here and clicked on the Dataverse in Power BI, but then I would need to know that URL for my Dataverse environment, which if you know that, that's fine. So it can go either way, but I just wanted to show you kind of the quick way of going from Dataverse to Power BI very easily. Now let's jump back into our Power Apps environment and look at some of the fields. So this is the metadata that we talked about, and you can see things like the display name, the internal names. I believe I have, I'm looking at this. So what I've done is earlier we looked at all the tables, sometimes referred to as entities. Now we're into the specific account table, and we're looking at the column names. So again, we've kind of stepped down into one particular table, and we're looking at the metadata for that table, and that's what we're seeing here, the different columns, the different types, whether they're required or not. If I use the furthest tab over here, the data tab, that's where I can actually work with the data, in this case from the Power Apps portal. So I'm actually, went to Power Apps, went to tables, clicked on account, clicked on data, and now I'm working with data. I can literally read all my data. If I click on any of these rows, I can edit the data. I can delete data. So, create, read, update, delete, all available from the browser in Dataverse in the Power Apps portal. I mentioned there is a link out there. So if you want more information about some of the different terminology that gets used in different places. In the Power Apps UI, we're pretty much trying to use all the new technology. So tables, columns, rows, and choices. In the software development kit, it's still using the old terms, entity, attribute, record, etc. And the reason for that is Microsoft didn't want to break code. So if you'd already written code, software development kit, and if they had changed from entity to table, your existing code would have broken. So they didn't want to do that. Similar reason for the Dataverse web application programming interface. If they had changed these, they would have broken existing code. So we're left sort of with the old names in those two particular areas. But the Power Apps UI, I keep saying for the most part, that's because, let's see, do I have a URL up here? I'll show you when we do one of the demos. In the URL, you'll still see entity. So even in the UI, it's not quite completely renamed. There's still little pockets where you can find the old names. I should mention that a lot of the demos that I'm doing or showing you are available to me because I joined the Microsoft 365 developer program, and you can too. When you do this, you end up getting a free Microsoft developer sandbox. It comes with 90-day renewable E5 developer subscription. I believe it's 25 users you can allow in there. You can load sample data, gives you access to different recommendations and experts. And what happens is, so here's some of the details that you get with that. Did I mention it was free? I'm a big free person. When you join, as long as you're using that developer tenant, and it is not for production, it's for training and developing and things like that. But as long as you're using it, Microsoft will automatically renew it. I've had one for over 8 years now. So my MAD SharePoint one of the user groups that I mentioned in the beginning, has been using the same developer tenant for, like I said, over 8 years. Notice it's actually on a 100 it says 117. It's supposed to be a 120-day renewal cycle. So every 120 days, because it used to be 120 days back when this thing was first presented, I get an email. Congratulations, you're still using this. We've automatically renewed it. So it really is it's not like if you use, now I have some, I've actually had multiple. I have some where I stopped using them and then they eventually got cleaned up. I get an email from Microsoft, you're not using this anymore, we're going to delete it. And then 30 days later, it's been deleted. So you don't have to worry if you created one and you don't want to use it anymore, it will eventually go away. But as long as you're using it, and usage can be as simple as just checking the email on it, it gets automatically renewed, which is really great because you can use it to build things and go back and build more on them and don't have to worry about them being blown away. So highly encourage folks to take advantage of that. I make all of my developers that I work with to create their own, so they can play around, they can be their own. The nice thing about this is you get your own tenant, so it's your own. You're the Office 65 administrator. You've got full power to do anything and everything, so you're not kind of like, whenever you're working like work with like, or even if maybe in development or QA, a lot of times you're limited for certain reasons. I work for the Army, so there's a lot of security, a lot of red tape I have to do the minuscule things. But my own tenant, I can do whatever I want. So it's a real joy to have that. Another thing I want to shout out, Tom, they shut yours down after 1 year. Did you stop using it? What happened? Or maybe they just didn't like you.
No, they shut 2 of mine down after 1 year. And again, I'm doing heavy development, and I don't know why it turned off. And they couldn't, So one thing is, if you don't use it and it goes past that 30 days, you're done. You can't get it back. Like, it's gone. It might hang for like another 60, but it's gone. It's eventually. So just be careful if you are using it. Make sure you use it.
It's good advice. I'm sad to hear that you had some that shouldn't have gone that went, but I guess there's always the exceptions to the rules. There's always, you can never. So what's the lesson there? I guess always back up your stuff.
I had a lot. Yeah, I'm just gonna be watching this one because I'm one of those people that have signed up to so many that they don't like my phone number anymore.
Me too.
Yeah. So be careful. I tried to get a fake phone number. It didn't work.
They really. I blame myself. I've been a big advocate of the tool. I've been sharing it with all my students. I make it actually part of my curriculum, that a lot of my classes, there's an intro to cloud computing where I make students get it. And this semester, really, it was actually down for a few weeks, where it wasn't even a phone number thing. It was just said, it's not available. So I had to extend the due date on some assignments. So yeah, take it with a grain of salt. Let me back up here. It is free, so there. I guess the worst case scenario, they'll give you your money back. Yeah, for now that I say that, my one from 8 years ago might, watch something happen to it. But I don't have anything up there that if it got blown away, I wouldn't be too sad about. So it's not production, and we'll keep that in mind. Learn is another great free resource. So many people I work with think of it as a documentation only, and that couldn't be further from the truth. It's got tutorials, hands-on labs. There's some of the exercises that folks do come with an Azure sandbox, which is like, hey, 4 hours of free Azure time, not costing you anything. Doesn't even, if you have like credits, it doesn't use any of your credits. Put you in a different directory that you can try things out. So I find that really helpful and popular. And it's another thing that I tell my developers. I say, go out and get an Office developer tenant and go out to Microsoft Learn and do some learning paths. You can see here there's all sorts of different learning paths. They're kind of like college courses. I actually use some of these in my college courses where I'll assign students, hey, do this module from this learning path or do this module from that learning path. And by using the Azure sandbox, they can go out and they can do activities in Azure without having to worry about you paying for it. So that's always nice. And I mentioned Microsoft Learn because I use a lot of that in these demos. So in this first demo where we provision our Dataverse environment, it's a link from Microsoft Learn. There's a nice little tutorial here that walks you getting started with Dataverse from Microsoft Teams. Talks about what it is, how to provision your first environment, and then create data and all that. So that's what we're going to do here. Let me kind of walk you through this. So this is the gist of that tutorial, where they've got you going into your Teams environment, locating the Power Apps app inside your Teams environment, adding it to well, in this case, we pinned it to our left side navigation here. Now, when I click on that Power Apps, I can click Start Now, and that's going to allow me to add Power Apps to one of my teams. And what that does, this is the step that will provision the Dataverse environment for that team. So in this case, I selected Demo 1, I clicked Create, and now in Demo 1, it provisioned the team behind the scenes, and it pops up in Power Apps and says, hey, you've created this database. You probably want an app to connect to it. So it brings me to the Power Apps and says, hey, why don't you go ahead and start creating an app? And we'll put a pause there. So that really, this is the step here that provisions your Dataverse for Teams. If I go out and show you my current one for a minute, and I'm jumping slightly ahead, but that's okay. We'll go over here and just go out to the Power Apps. Oops. and sign into my Mad SharePoint tenant. So this is some of the Dataverse environments I have. Now, it is tricky. So if I'm in Power Apps here, and if I click on environment, you'll see that I've got my default environment. That's the one you get with any of them. I've got some developer environment. Those are Power Apps Community Plan, where someone went into my environment and added on their own environment. So specifically for developers. And the idea is that you can tell they're developer environments, number one, because they got the name of the developer in front of the environment. And then this one is just another, I was about to say regular Dataverse. And the reason is this is not a Teams Dataverse environment. So there is a distinction. The tricky part here is, though, Power Apps doesn't show you all the Teams environments, even though it does say other environments here. So it's a little tricky. If I go into Power Automate, it will show me all my environments. I'm not sure why that is. It's just difference between Power Automate and Power Apps. So now, I'm still logged into my Mad SharePoint tenant. My current environment is my default environment. But if I click that to see some of the other environments, am I not? Who am I? I'm not Mad SharePoint. So this is good. This is one of those things to watch out for. I just logged in here. Let me switch to Mad SharePoint. Let's go to Mad SharePoint. There we go. Make sure I'm in the right identity first, right? So let's see. Hopefully that's Mad SharePoint. Verify that, and it looks like I am. Okay, that's good. So let's go grab Power Automate just to throw it in here real fast. I guess I could have clicked the URL or the icon over in the apps as well. What I'm trying to show, though, is that Power Automate will show you all of your environments, and Power Apps doesn't. And it's a little maddening. I've been working with Dataverse, and I'll switch sometimes, and I'll click the environment, and I'll go, hey, where'd my environment go? I was working with my Demo 1 environment for Teams, and Power Apps won't show it unless I'm in it. So that's something else I'll show you guys in a minute. So here, now you can see. So in Power Automate, it's go ahead and enumerating through my environment. And when this finishes enumerating, you'll see many more environments, because it's include my default environment, regular Dataverse environments, developer environment, and I'm not ready to give feedback, Microsoft, please, and my Teams Dataverse environment. So we'll let that spin and think about what it wants to show us. Jump back here off the script. All right. But this actually brings up a good issue. One of the things I've discovered is that when working with Dataverse, working with Power Apps, working with Power Automate, it's all cloud-based. And so it is very dependent on your network connectivity. And I've been in a lot of instances where my network connectivity is iffy. And so in this example, this was the end of, I created I provisioned my Dataverse environment. And instead of seeing, it says here, it's tricky. It says here success, but over here it says there's a problem getting to it. And I've had users do this, and they've literally emailed me, hey, there's a problem. And I know they don't want to hear this, but I'll say refresh your screen. And that's exactly what I did, and then this error went away. The moral of the story is, because it's my network connectivity, sometimes you'll get a message back that isn't real, that's not true, So you really, I know it's the definition of insanity to try the same thing over and over and expect a different result, but literally hit refresh. Don't trust the error on the very first time. That wasn't really an error, and that happens a lot, unfortunately. So here's the Power Apps. This is the demo I was trying to show you live, where you've got all the environments from the Power Apps environment. But if I switch over to Power Automate, you'll see I've got more than just those environments. I've got Demo 1, Demo 2, Dinner, etc. And in fact, this is probably not the best way to, if I put my IT admin hat on and I'm looking at environments and I'm trying to manage environments, I wouldn't go to Power Automate and Power Apps to do that. I would go to the Power Platform Admin Center. So from the Admin Center, there's a nice environments link that you can click on, and assuming you have permissions, you'll see all the environments that you have permissions to and what type of environment they are, what state they're in, what region they belong to, all the good information. So that really is the best place to go. And you can go to the Power Platform Admin Center even if you're not an admin. So at my work in my production environment, I'm not an admin, but I still can go to the Power Platform Admin Center and see the environments that I have access to. All right, so the next part of the demo, the second takeaway, was creating your first table. So again, I've got a great little article. So when I click on that link, it'll take me to the Learn article on how to create the table. And it talks about the Power Apps Visual Table Editor, which is sort of a lightweight editor to when you're first creating your table, it focuses on the details, the custom details that you want to add. So, what's the name of the table? What columns do you want to add? And it won't show you necessarily the system columns, and it won't show you necessarily all the sort of the system data. It tries to, this particular editor tries to show you just the customizations you're doing. Now, this next editor in the tutorial is the Power Apps Table Editor. That, when you go to tables, and it showed you how to get to it, it's kind of it's not hidden, but it's not easy to get to. That's where you can see all the metadata. So you can see created by, modified by, system metadata, custom metadata, all the different data types, everything, whole numbers, currencies. You can go in there, you can manage permissions from this screen, where you can set things to either full access or collaborate, private, reference, none if someone doesn't have any permissions. So the Microsoft Learn does a great job of explaining all that, showing you how to make those changes, to customize things if you need to. There's even a nice little check your knowledge. This is one of the things that Microsoft Learn people don't realize. It has sort of like practice exam questions. So I used Microsoft Learn solely for getting ready for the PL 900 exam, which is the Power Platform Fundamentals exam, and I passed that just using Microsoft Learn. Here we are now going in and executing the steps in that tutorial. So I'm going into my Power Apps inside of Microsoft Teams. I'm clicking that Start Now. So for step 1, provision my data. This time I'm going to do Demo 2. I'll click Create, and it's going to pop up with Apps and say, all right, let's go create an app. So it's provisioning my Dataverse for Teams behind the scenes. I'm giving this app a name. I think the tutorial, this is an equipment-based app, so keep track of my equipment. So I'll give it a name. After that, I'm going to go in there and add some columns, and the tutorial walks you through it. It says, hey, add a first name, an owner, date deployed. So it's got a list of some of the different types of columns that you want to add, just to demo that. Now, notice, so I created the app. The Dataverse has been provisioned in the background, but what I need to do now is figure out how I'm going to hook the app up to that data. So I can click on that, and I can say create a table in my Dataverse database, which is what I'm doing. So I'll give it a name, and it even has a, hey, I'll go and pluralize it for you. Great, thanks, appreciate that. I'll go and create that, and now that's creating that equip table in my Dataverse for the Demo 2 team. Now it brings up that lightweight Power Apps editor, the one that just focuses on my customizations, where I can enter, add some additional columns, or I can actually add data. So it's nice. It allows me to add columns, add metadata, basically change the schema of the table, or hand jam some data in. So much like, and I hate to say this word, a lot of people cringe when I say it, but it's kind of like Microsoft Access, where it really lets you make structural changes and add data kind of willy-nilly. It's great for the power users. It's great for the citizen developers who they're not trying to put on they're not that concerned about what's data normalization or proper database design. They're just trying to get their job done. They're trying to enter in some lightweight data. They know it's text. Maybe it's required. Maybe it's recommended. That's what this tool is geared to. So there's all sorts of other options that they can look at. But as they walk through here, they're adding columns. I'm going to speed through this demo a little bit just for the sake of time. So you can see as I walk through, I'm adding, I added one column that was text. I added another one that was date and time. You can see some of the, if I want to display some of the system metadata, I can say, hey, I also want to see who created this, or when it was created when this record was entered. And now I've got a view of that data. And if I want, I can start hand jamming some data in there. Oh, I think I'm going to add one more column. Let's see. We'll work through that. Equipment type. Oh, this is to demonstrate that you can have choices. So sort of so they can choose from a drop down. So it demonstrates I think the tutorial really does a great job of covering a lot of features in a short period of time. It doesn't really take that long to get through the tutorial, about an hour. So here we are adding existing columns. Finally, I start hand jamming some data in, and I could import data. I don't, the tutorial doesn't do that; it just has us enter some data. But later, when I show you import export, you're not restricted to hand jamming data in there. But here I am just entering some data, and then eventually I go back to my app and display the data. All right. We created our first table. That was the result. Now let's build an app around that table. And this is incredibly easy too. And again, there's a nice little article for that. So with this one, we're picking up where we left off. There's that equips table that we just created. We're going to say, hey, let's add that to our screen. So on my screen, I say use data. I'm going to go search for that particular environment that I've connected to, the equips table in my current Dataverse environment. Now I could connect to other Dataverse environments. I could connect to other data sources, but we're keeping it real simple. So we'll just go. I'm just showing you there that there are other options to connect to. Let's hurry past some of that. So I clicked on my equips database, and what happens then is it goes out and generates code for me. It uses something called the hero template to give me navigation on the left-hand side, details on the right-hand side, and that way a user can easily navigate through the different records in my database and look at the details of each record on the right-hand side and do create, edit, update, delete. So just that fast, if I preview this app, I've got my fully functional CRUD application for managing equipment data in a Microsoft Teams Dataverse. So that I'm walking through entering some data. Now you might say, well, wait a minute. What if you don't like what the code they generated? Right? This is no code, low code environment. So no code. We didn't write any code. Low code. Okay. If you want to customize some things like the time here. I want the date purchased, but I don't know about the hour and the minute. That doesn't make sense. So let's go in and remove those. That's where we start to get sort of the low code side of things. So as I go in here and start making changes, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that date and time. I just delete that out of there. So we'll highlight that and hit delete or cut. You notice immediately it's got a little error message, because there's a calculated formula in there. And if I look at that calculated formula, it was referencing those columns. So there were those controls. So now here's the low-code side. I got to go in there. I got to see where where it was referencing the hour value and the minute value, and I got to remove them. So that's what it do. And the process is you unlock the control, you edit the formula. It's like editing an Excel formula. So that's what they mean when they say low code. And again, I'll kind of speed through it. It takes a few minutes to get through it. But it's not difficult. And eventually, once it's done, I fix up the formula, I republish the app, and all of a sudden it looks good. So here it is now. I'm in my demo one team, and I can see any of the apps that I deployed, any of the tables that are deployed alongside with it. I've got a bunch of them deployed, but that is soup to nuts, creating the provisioning Dataverse, creating the table inside of Dataverse, and then creating an app around it and putting it out there for the world to use. So I have a bunch of other demos. I'm not going to make it in the last 7 minutes, but I'll kind of highlight some of the other things that you can do. Some of the other things you could do, create an automated flow. So if I wanted to do, say, when someone enters a new record, maybe a new piece of equipment, notify someone else, send an email, or put a record somewhere else in SharePoint. So you can, if you're not familiar with Power Automate and flows, there's triggers that you can use to automatically initiate flows. You can also do manual flows, like from a button or something like that. But in this case, if a record gets selected or created or updated, deleted, there's ways to then say, based on that trigger, perform one or more actions. And that's what I want. And we don't have time for that, but there is a demo there. And I'll post these with my slides if you want to look at them later. But that's what you can do, is you can go out to the flows and you connect to this Dataverse just like you would. You can connect to a Dataverse in Teams just like you would a Dataverse in a standard type Dataverse. And that's what this demo is walking through, but we won't walk through that. You can test your flow out. You can actually enter data, see the data flow from Dataverse, see it go into Teams. I've got demos for importing and exporting data out of Dataverse. So if I go back to Power Apps and I'm looking at my table and I don't, maybe I've got 50 records I want to enter, or 100 records, or 1,000 records. Dataverse for Teams holds up to about 1 million records. So we'll talk more about some of the limitations in a minute, but here's a demo where I'm going through and I'm saying, hey, I really want to enter some data there, and I can walk through and import the data. I think in this particular demo, I go through, I import it from an existing Excel spreadsheet. So in that Excel spreadsheet, I connect to it. I use a data flow to connect to that Excel spreadsheet, and then I do a little bit of ETL. I mentioned extract, transform, load, the Power Query editor. I think in this particular example, I take and I split the full name, right? If I look back at the Excel spreadsheet, it has a owner, but it doesn't have first name, last name. So I did a little ETL in Power Query to separate for the owner into a first name and last name. So that's kind of a neat feature that if you need to manipulate the data at all, you can do that and then load it into your Dataverse table. The key with that is once you're done, that data flow, you can go into your team and see what data flows are out there, and you can schedule them, you can run them manually. So they remember all the steps that are involved. So if they remember that, they take the owner and split it into first name, last name. Whatever steps that you create as part of that import process are all retained, and whenever you run them, they get rerun each time. So that's kind of a cool feature. I mentioned editing data with Excel, so this is a good one. This one is where you're accessing the the Dataverse table. In this case, I think computers. I'm going to say I'm going to edit in Excel. So how is that different from importing from a data source that might be Excel? What this does, my power users love this because they're always, David, I edit my data in Excel. I say, well, I'm going to move it to Dataverse, but you can still edit in Excel. It's just going to be centrally located now. Like, what are you talking about? And then I show them this, and they get a warm fuzzy. They're like, okay, great. They go to Dataverse. In fact, they don't even have to do this. I can do this for them and just send them the Excel spreadsheet. So they open the Excel spreadsheet, and now there's their data from Dataverse. Notice the add-in on the right here. This is the Microsoft Power Apps Office add-in that it provides create, read, update, delete. It automatically signed me into Dataverse. If for some reason the single sign-on failed, you would just click sign on and you would sign in. But notice as I'm navigating through here, I'm doing create, read, update, delete operations. It's giving me, like, if the owner is a lookup, so I have to choose from actual owner objects. I can't just type in something willy-nilly. I can add new records, I can delete existing records, I can update records, and what will happen is the Excel spreadsheet and the Power Apps add-in will keep track of all my changes, such that when I'm done, so as I fast forward here to the end of my changes and click publish, it's going to say, hey, well, number one, I tried to update some read-only fields, so it's going to throw those away. It warns me about that. Then it says, oh, you've got one row that was created, 4 rows that were changed, and 1 row that were removed. Does that sound right? I say, yep, that sounds good. And it's going to send them back to Dataverse. So now everyone else that's looking at that data in Dataverse is aware of my changes, and I made them using my favorite tool, Microsoft Excel. So this is a big win for adoption. When I tell my users I'm taking their Excel data away from them, put it in the Dataverse, but I'm going to give them an Excel spreadsheet back that they can use to make their changes. That's going along, and that's just me showing the resulting data. So. The last thing, a demo that's included in this particular slide deck, is I have demos of taking the apps that you've created, any tables that are associated, and packaging them all up together so that I can put them in a zip file and send them to somebody. Maybe I want to give them to my IT admin to deploy to production. Maybe I want to share them with a colleague. For whatever reason, if I want to export a solution, that gives me the capability to export my app and any dependencies, and that's what this demo walks through. So as you go into Power Apps and you're clicking some of the things that you want to export. So here I'm clicking my computer app and my equipment list demo app and what's for lunch app, and then it will automatically say, hey, these have dependencies. This one's dependent on this table. This one's dependent on that table. Do you want to include those dependencies? So as I export as a solution, I can choose to whether or not I want to include those dependencies. It's recommended that I do. And then it's going to export it as a zip file that I can email to somebody or put out on a file share or however I want to transform it. That way they can, like I said, my admins can take that and import it and reuse everything that I just did. All right, so I ran through that. I don't have time for the backup and restore, but there is a backup and restore that you can do. The key takeaway for backup and restore is that they're only there for 7 days. Some key takeaways for Dataverse for teams versus regular Dataverse. You get one per team. Dataverse, you can have as many Dataverse environments as you want. They're unlimited, but you do pay for them. Dataverse for Teams is included with your Office 365 license with just about all of them. So they're quote unquote free. You get about 1 million rows, or not 2 gigabyte. You really get about 1.75 gigabyte. They take some of that data is used for metadata. So that's why it says 2 gigabyte, but you have to account for metadata. But you can upgrade. So if you create a database in Dataverse for Teams, and then later say, we need to take this, enterprise-wide, we need more people to use it, there is an option to upgrade your Dataverse for Teams to regular Dataverse. There's also template apps you can install, so you don't have to use customs app. Microsoft has some great examples like employees IDs, inspection, issue reporting. There's lots of different resources that you can go to. I won't go over each one of them, but they're all in my slides. You can check them out later. And real quick, I've got some quick questions, give away a few prizes, see who's been paying attention. Can anyone in the chat let me know what the name of the table editor is that shows the system create columns? So not that first editor, but that second editor. And I didn't really harp on that. So I'll take pretty much any answer that's even remotely close. The first person in the chat that throws out the name of a table editor, I gave you half the answer right there. Close enough, Joe. You win if you want. And what is it? It's actually, I think, the Power Apps table editor is what they called it. Real. It just rolls off your tongue. So they distinguish that in the article in the Learn tutorial versus the visual editor, which is the lightweight editor. The second question I have is, what's the name of the default template used when creating a Dataverse app? And I just showed you guys the answer, the hero template. Sorry about that. But yeah, that's that. If anyone says hero template and wants a free pass to Pluralsight, the first person that puts hero template in the chat can have a free pass to Pluralsight. And the last prize 3, this one's always a tough one. See who's really been paying attention. What does MCP dead stand for? So I mentioned that right in the beginning. You guys probably thought I was just spitballing, but just curious if anyone has any idea whatsoever. Again, I'm a really easy grader. If you can tell me what the M stands for, you'll get it. Basically, it stands for, yes, that's right, Tom. Microsoft Certified Professional Developer, Enterprise Application Developer. It is a mouthful. So I'm out of time. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Hopefully you got something out of it. If you have questions, feel free to shoot me an email. There's my email. If you want a job, check out my company's job site. If you want to come to my user group, check out my user group site. Thanks for taking the time. Hopefully you got a tidbit or two out of the talk, and hopefully we'll see you over in the closing and we'll win some prizes. So, Tom, any last words before we wrap up?
Any last words? Do you have your slides? Do you have the slide for the raffle? I mean, not the raffle, the giveaway. I'm sorry, the feedback. Yeah, there you go. Just so people can get feedback. I'm outside now.
Nice.
I'm picking up. My daughter's just getting off the bus. So.
Oh my gosh. Yes, please send us feedback. We love the feedback.
It's very convenient time. All right. I'm going back inside. Yeah, no, thanks, Dave. I appreciate that. It's pretty good information here. Hopefully everybody learned something. And do you need emails for those people that had answered the questions?
If they can just shoot me an email, I'll put my email out in the chat. So anyone for the folks, Jason, Joe, anybody that wants that prize, just shoot me an email and I'll send you the code. Yeah,
okay. So we have Jason, I know Joe. Yeah, you could give Jason the one of those prizes there. I'll get you in contact with them.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
All right, so that's it. Yeah, so shoot David an email and he'll hook you up with some of those prizes. All right, yep, we're going to be jumping over to the Eagles track, so feel free to join us over there. We're going to do the raffle live and just do a little wrap up. If not, that's fine. We'll reach out to you. If you win, we'll reach out to you. And thanks everybody for your time. Thanks again, David.
Thanks.
All right. You can see.
Bye.
All right. Bye.